The Zodiac Killer, a legacy of fear and mystery. The late 1960s and early 1970s were a time of fear in Northern California, not because of war or politics or anything you'd expect, but because of a shadow, a killer. A man who called himself the Zodiac. He was responsible for at least 5 confirmed murders, but he claimed, proudly I might add, that he'd killed many more, and if that wasn't terrifying enough, it was how he toyed with the world that truly set him apart. This wasn't a man hiding from the police. Oh no, the Zodiac taunted them. He sent letters, ciphers, and bizarre messages to newspapers and investigators, daring them to stop him. Some of his puzzles were cracked, revealing chilling messages, but others, they remain unsolved, even to this day. And here's the thing, the Zodiac Killer was never caught. So who was he? How did he outsmart the authorities for so long? And more importantly, could you solve the mystery he left behind? Let's dive into the story of the Zodiac Killer, his crimes, his cryptic codes, and the questions that still haunt us more than 50 years later. The Zodiac's killing spree started on December 20th, 1968. It was a quiet night on a lonely road in Berryessa, California. A teenage couple, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, was parked on a lover's lane, probably just enjoying a peaceful moment together. They didn't make it out alive. Both were gunned down in what appeared to be a random, senseless act of violence. There were no witnesses, no motive, just 2 young lives cut short. 6 months later, on July 4th, 1969, it happened again. Another young couple, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau, were sitting in their car in Vallejo. This time, the killer didn't just leave behind 2 victims. Michael Mageau, despite being shot multiple times, survived. He described his attacker as a heavy-set man with short, curly hair. But the real nightmare was just beginning. On August 1st, 1969, 3 newspapers, the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald, received identical letters. The letters were from the Zodiac Killer, a figure shrouded in mystery and fear. The public was captivated and terrified, as the letters contained cryptic messages and ciphers that challenged law enforcement. These letters weren't ordinary. They started with a chilling confession. "Dear editor, I am the killer of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman." And to prove it, the letters included details about the murders that hadn't been made public. But it wasn't just the confession that made these letters infamous. Attached to each one was a cipher, a block of strange symbols that the Zodiac claimed would reveal his identity if someone could solve it. And then came the threat. If the newspapers didn't publish the ciphers on their front pages, the Zodiac promised to kill again. The papers complied, and just 1 week later, the first cipher, the Z408 cipher, was cracked by a school teacher and his wife. The message they uncovered? "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all." The rest of the cipher talked about collecting slaves for his afterlife. But here's the thing, the cipher didn't reveal his name. And the next ciphers he sent? They wouldn't be so easy to crack. On September 27th, 1969, the Zodiac struck again, this time in broad daylight. Bryan, Hartnell, and Cecelia Shepard were relaxing by Lake Berryessa when a man wearing a hooded mask approached them. He carried a gun, a knife, and told them he was an escaped convict who needed their car and money to flee to Mexico. But that was a lie. The man tied them up, then brutally stabbed both of them. Bryan Hartnell survived, but Cecelia Shepard did not. And as if the murder itself wasn't horrifying enough, the Zodiac left his calling card. He wrote a message on the couple's car door, listing the dates of his previous attacks, the locations, and his now iconic symbol, a crosshair. Later that night, the Zodiac called the police from a payphone. He didn't just confess, he made sure they knew it was him. The arrogance, the taunting, it was his signature. On October 11th, 1969, the Zodiac struck again. This time, it wasn't a couple parked in a secluded area. It was a cab driver named Paul Stine, shot in the head in San Francisco's Presidio Heights neighborhood. Here's what's so terrifying about this attack. It was public. Witnesses saw the killer calmly step out of the cab, wipe down the car to remove evidence, and walk away. He didn't run. He didn't panic. He just left. But of course, the Zodiac couldn't resist reaching out again. Just days later, the San Francisco Chronicle received another letter, this time with a piece of Paul Stine's bloody shirt enclosed. It was his way of proving, once again, that he was in control. Over the years, the Zodiac sent at least 18 letters. Many of them contained cryptic ciphers, but not all of them have been solved. Take the Z340 cipher, for example. It remained a mystery for over 50 years, until 2020, when a team of amateur codebreakers finally cracked it. The message they found didn't reveal the Zodiac's identity, but it was just as chilling. I hope you're having lots of fun in trying to catch me. And then there's the Z13 cipher. It's only 13 characters long, and the Zodiac claimed it contained his name. But to this day, no one has been able to solve it. Is the Zodiac's identity hiding in plain sight, or was it all just another one of his games? Over the years, investigators have zeroed in on dozens of suspects. Arthur Leigh Allen is probably the most famous. He was a convicted sex offender who matched the Zodiac's description and had circumstantial evidence tying him to the crimes. But the hard evidence just wasn't there. Other suspects have included Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and Ross Sullivan, a man whose appearance and behavior lined up eerily well with the Zodiac's profile. But no one, not one single person, has ever been definitively linked to the murders. So, here's where we're left. The Zodiac Killer remains one of the most infamous criminals in American history. He wasn't just a murderer, he was a manipulator, a man who thrived on fear and attention. His identity, still a mystery, his crimes, still unsolved. And now it's your turn. What do you think? Could the Zodiac's unsolved ciphers hold the key to his identity, or is the truth something we'll never uncover? Let me know your theories in the comments, because one thing is certain. The Zodiac's shadow still looms over Northern California and over the world.